The Fox 61 News at 10 starts now.
Tonight, we continue to follow breaking news out of Hartford after a police officer shot a man in front of several community members earlier today. Now, this is the second deadly police shooting in a little more than a week, both including a person who was holding a knife and in a reported mental health crisis. Thank you so much for joining us after the game. I'm Annette Montgomery. Right now, details are still limited, but the scene has been active for more than 9 hours, and we have team coverage tonight. Fox 61's Tim Lateau has reaction from the Greater Hartford chapter of the NAACP. But we first began with Fox 61's Stephen Reels, who was in Bloomfield, just a short distance from where those shots were fired. Stephen.
Yeah, and now we are standing along the Bloomfield-Hartford line, and actually up through about an hour and a half ago, this entire road of Blue Hills Avenue was impossible to pass through just because of the sheer amount of local police and state police who are investigating what happened. But let's get into the details of everything. Hartford police say they came to the area around 11 this morning, and initially police say that they tried to use a taser on a man with a knife, but it was not successful. Police also tell us the man with the knife was suicidal. Police say the officer was backing away while giving the man several commands to drop the weapon, but he didn't. The officer then fired their weapon and hit the man. Now, we did speak with some neighbors who were familiar with the man who was shot and who say they were there when it happened. They say it was chaotic, and people like Troy McDermott say that the man was harmless and this escalation was unnecessary.
Everybody said don't shoot him, he's not on his meds, all that. The officer shot. Like he walked towards the officer a little bit and the officer shot.
De-escalate, don't shoot.
And you heard it right there. The aftermath became extremely tense out here. Several people were heard shouting at police during our time at the scene. Now, the last we heard, the man who was shot this morning, he was in critical condition and in surgery this afternoon. Of course, we'll keep you updated as everything develops. But for now, live in Hartford, Stephen Reels, Fox 61.
Thank you so much, Stephen. And this shooting has left the community upset and devastated, including the Greater Hartford branch of the NAACP. The organization says it is deeply disturbed by what happened today. Fox 61's Tim Lateau spoke with leaders who are now calling for a transparent investigation.
NAACP leaders say no matter what the investigation finds, police officers need to do a better job de-escalating mental health calls.
A man gets shot 9 times because he's dealing with a mental health issue.
Greater Hartford NAACP leaders are angered after a second black man was shot by police in the span of 8 days in their city. They say both incidents involved a victim with mental health issues. Branch President Corey Betts acknowledged in Friday's shooting that the man shot was holding a large knife. But after watching cell phone video of the incident, he believes officers could have done more before they resorted to lethal force. Betts says multiple officers were on scene before the officer who fired his gun showed up. He feels that officer wasn't properly prepared to intervene at that moment. Betts wants the investigation to reveal communication between officers, the timeline of events, and the crisis intervention tactics used. He asks investigators to determine whether every reasonable option was tried before the officer pulled the trigger.
Video we have reviewed shows the shooting officer arriving and within 30 seconds discharging his firearm. 9 times. When multiple officers are working to calm a mental health crisis, the expectation is that every arriving officer reinforces that effort, not escalate it. Loss of life should be the absolute last resort, not the option.
NAACP leaders plan on addressing the public again once more information and body cam footage has been released. In Bloomfield, Tim Lateau, Fox 61.
And we will continue to follow this breaking news, and we'll bring you the latest on air and online at fox61.com. You can also watch full coverage on Fox 61 Plus, our free streaming app.
Well, the last couple of days have gotten above freezing, up in the low 40s with plenty of sunshine. And while we're at it, let's have a spring-like day to end this bitterly cold, snowy winter. Look at this, the last day of February, 45 to 50. but March will come in like a little baby lion. Not a big storm, actually not a storm at all, just a little front. If anything, new information is showing maybe a couple of snow showers, but some computer modeling is showing maybe an inch or two. So we'll still work this out in the next half hour, so I'll have more coming up later in the newscast. 24 Winstead, the 29 Chester, so 20s in northwestern Connecticut, mid-30s, low 30s along the shoreline, actually down to 25 now in New Haven, not 35. Wind basically right out of the cold Long Island Sound. That's why it's cold down there on the shore. Old front staying away. Otherwise, tonight, partly cloudy, lows down into the 20s, maybe even the upper teens. And tomorrow, we wake up, sun up at 6:37, patchy fog, I should say 6:27. Warm and pleasant. Temperatures will be averaging 45 to 50. And again, inland warmer, a little bit cooler along the beaches. It doesn't matter, though. A nice warm day to end February. Gorgeous Saturday. Coming up, I'll let you know how much snow. I'm going to check in some new computer information, and we'll look next week, first week of March. Is there any unsettled weather, any snow, rain, or all the above? Details in a few minutes. And that?
Nice to see 40s and 50s. Thank you, Sam. Well, tonight, the Connecticut Department of Correction is responding to a January report that raised serious concerns across the state's prison system. The report from the Connecticut Office of the Correction Ombudsman cited issues with health care, sanitation, hygiene, and chronic staffing shortages. The report says facilities relied too heavily on lockdowns. And the DOC acknowledged staffing challenges and says about 100 new correction officers will be trained by the end of this month, with a goal of 300 by the end of 2026. Officials also point to rising healthcare costs and ongoing facility renovations, while also saying they welcome continued discussions to address these concerns. Well, a new poll from the University of New Hampshire highlights the early frontrunners in Connecticut's 2026 race for governor. The latest Nutmeg State poll shows Greenwich State Senator Ryan Fazio is leading the Republicans. He's now earned the highest net favorability among likely GOP primary voters, with former New Britain Mayor Aaron Stewart close behind. Then on the Democratic side, Governor Ned Lamont remains the clear favorite as he seeks a third term. He's holding a strong lead over challenger Josh Elliott. Still, Lamont's approval rating has dipped as voters point to the cost of living and taxes as their top concerns. We'll take a look. A road in West Haven is now back open after a major fuel spill closed it down yesterday. A car crashed into a transport truck head-on yesterday afternoon, causing that tanker to roll over. Thousands of gallons of heating oil spilled out of the truck and into the streets of a residential neighborhood, as well as the West River. Forest Road was closed down as crews worked to clean up the spill and flip that tanker back over. No one was seriously hurt. We now know the name of the person killed after a crash on I-84 yesterday in Manchester. State police say 22-year-old Luca Sartori Souza from Hartford was driving on an exit ramp when he crashed into a tractor trailer. At this time, it's still not clear what caused the crash, but Sartori Souza was pronounced dead on scene. The driver of that trailer was not hurt. Well, this Monday, Norwich volunteer fire departments and city leaders plan to meet to discuss next steps. Now, this all comes after the Yantic Volunteer Fire Department was suspended. Earlier this month, the city and the department disagreed over terms in a new contract, and the fire chief said they were only given 24 hours to look it over. Since then, the community has gathered for meetings and rallies in support of the department. Right now, more than 2,400 people have signed a petition to reopen the department and keep it operational. The city manager of Norwich says this meeting represents a, quote, positive development in the spirit of collaboration. And Norwich Volunteer Fire Department chiefs released this joint statement. It says they want to, quote, work toward a timely resolution that puts resident safety first while respecting the city charter and the long tradition of volunteer service in our community, end quote. Right now, we're following breaking news at 10:21. Singer-songwriter Neil Sedaka has died. A statement from the family says they are, quote, devastated by Sedaka's sudden passing earlier today. Now, he was best known for his hits Breaking Up Is Hard to Do, Oh Carol, and Calendar Girl. He also wrote chart toppers for other artists. Over the course of his career, Sedaka was nominated for 5 Grammys. His family says he was a rock and roll legend and an incredible human being. He was 86 years old.